All right, Christina, we should be live now.
Are we live?
We are live. I just
We're
made
live.
sure to pick the stream I set up and hopefully it's working properly. I'm going to double check that real fast. I have this video I shared with you in Discord. I don't think that you've watched it yet. I stumbled upon this. I actually tried kind of resetting my YouTube algorithm because of the children. There was a lot of Miss Rachel and ABCs and 123s on my YouTube, mixed in
Oh,
with plenty of stuff I look up. But, in setting up my own old lady YouTube algorithm, um, I started getting more access to other people similar. So this lady popped up, and I think, like, I don't want to give too much away on what I think about the delivery. I think you'll say the same things, but I'd like to see kind of what your perspective is. And then, of course, I can add mine in there. So let me just send this over to make sure the sound is good. Can you do a sound check for me?
you want me to talk or listen?
Worked pretty good. Perfect. All right, so let's see. Um, when you're tired of being who everyone expects you to be is the name of her video here. And I'll go ahead and play it. I do have, I believe, some ads that are going to pop up that I'll skip. And, we'll just see what kind of ads they want to throw at us on YouTube. We'll see.
Awesome.
I've been thinking about why I make YouTube videos, and I don't think it's for the reasons that people usually assume.
Real quick, if you want to jump in, I can pause it, or vice versa, or we can jump in while she's talking if it's not too much. I'll try to.
What's
Her handle, did you say?
her name?
See.
I feel like we need to know her name.
Yes. She's midlife
Yes.
anti-crisis.
That's her handle, right?
Yep, and here's what she's got for her. Trying to click on the wrong screens to show you this stuff.
Midlife Makeover is her book. I think I just gave her enough credit.
Substack. Yep. All right, back to the top and go.
I think it's because I've spent my whole life hiding, not in like a secret keeping or dramatic way, but just in the way that most women hide. By becoming whoever I thought the situation required at the time, by becoming the person who would keep the peace, and by trying to be accepted and trying not to make things uncomfortable for everybody else. I got very good at that. And people reward you for that kind of behavior. They praise you for being steady. They depend on you. They trust you. They build their lives around the version of you that makes them comfortable. But somewhere along the way, I lost track of who I actually was underneath all of that. And here's something people should probably know. I'm not perfect. I'm not some enlightened midlife woman who has transcended insecurity. I'm just a woman in midlife, 56 years old, trying to figure things out. Sometimes I'm peaceful and calm, and people appreciate that. And sometimes I'm angry. Sometimes I talk about things that I said I wasn't going to talk about.
This cleaner is insane. It removes baked-on oven grease, black mold, and years of...
Sometimes I don't feel like talking about something, and then all of a sudden I do. Sometimes I circle back to an old subject and talk about it again. Sometimes I repeat myself. Sometimes I tell the same stories more than once. And sometimes when I do that, there's this voice in my head that says, You sound like a silly old woman. You're ridiculous. The younger people must be rolling their eyes at you right now. Sometimes I even think that about my own kids. I think maybe I'm starting to get annoying. But what's strange is that inside my own head, sometimes I still feel like that insecure little 15-year-old girl. But I'm not 15. Nobody is here paying my bills. Nobody is here running my life. And it doesn't actually matter what anybody else thinks. So I've started asking myself, who convinced me I wasn't worth knowing anyway? Who decided I was too much, or weird, or unpleasant? Was it those kids in 3rd grade who picked on me? Was it the times I tried to talk about it at home and got brushed off? Was it being 11 years old and quietly understanding that I was the one keeping my grandmother out of the nursing home, that I was chosen to be the nurse in the house? And when I was 15 and I got a little job and I got busy with my own life and she did have to go into a nursing home, did anyone acknowledge the guilt that I carried about that? Or did I just add it to the list of things that I wasn't allowed to talk about? I learned very early that being needed was safer than being known. Being capable was safer than being vulnerable. Being in control was safer than letting somebody else see the messy and uncertain parts of me. Even in marriage, especially in marriage. The main reason I couldn't stay married was because I never really let my spouses know me. I stayed in control. I had to be in control. I held the power. I kept parts of myself guarded. Because being known felt like exposure and it felt unsafe. And I didn't know how to do that without feeling like I might disappear. So here I am. Tens of thousands of strangers watching me on YouTube. And maybe the reason I'm willing to do this here in front of all these strangers isn't just because this feels like a place where I'm allowed to evolve. The truth is, I don't have to look any of you in the eye. I don't have to see the flicker of disapproval on your face. I don't have to sit across from someone and watch them silently wonder, where is this coming from? When I record these videos, I'm alone. I'm alone right now. There's nobody interrupting me. Nobody reacting in real time. Nobody raising an eyebrow. It's just me and the camera. And afterward, I get to watch it back. I get to judge it. I get to decide whether it's something I want to put out into the world or just delete. By the time you see it, it's already been filtered through me. It's already survived my own criticism. It's already been examined and questioned, and sometimes it's deleted. So yes, it's vulnerable, but it's also controlled. It's exposure with boundaries, controlled exposure. And maybe that's okay. Maybe when you've spent your whole life managing how you're perceived, you start with what feels survivable, and this feels survivable to me. You start with the version of vulnerability that doesn't overwhelm your nervous system. And maybe that's what midlife looks like for a lot of women. From the outside, it can look like a crisis. She changes her hair. She changes her job. She starts saying things that she never used to say. She questions her marriage. She questions her friendships. She questions her beliefs. And everyone whispers, what's going on with her? But what if nothing is wrong? What if she's not falling apart? What if she is finally letting herself surface? What if the woman you're seeing at 50 or 55 isn't new? She's just no longer buried. Where was she all along? She was raising kids. She was building a career. She was holding families together. She was smoothing conflict, and she was keeping the church groups going, and she was being dependable. She was being what the moment required. And there's nothing wrong with that. But somewhere in all of that responsibility, a quiet editing process was happening. You don't say certain things, you don't think that too loudly, and you don't disrupt the structure. You survive inside of it. And then one day, there's space. And in that space, she appears. Not a new woman, just no longer hidden. So, when I change my mind, when I revisit an old subject, when I let anger show up, when I speak more plainly than I used to, maybe that's not instability. Maybe that's integration. Maybe that's what it looks like when someone is finally letting more of herself exist at the same time. Peaceful and angry, certain and unsure. The 15-year-old and the 50-something-year-old woman sharing the same body. That's not a crisis. That's wholeness trying to happen. And maybe that's all this channel really is. Not a brand, not a reinvention, just practice. Practice being visible. Practice letting the camera stay on when something uncomfortable comes up. Practice saying the thing and surviving it. I don't know exactly who I'm becoming. I don't know exactly what this channel will look like 5 years from now, or if it'll still even be here. I don't know what I'll feel like talking about next month. But I do know this. I'm tired of hiding in plain sight. I'm tired of editing myself down to a most acceptable version. And I think I'm finally old enough to understand that being known is not the same thing as being approved of. And maybe that's enough for now. I hope I've given you something to think about. Thanks for watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next video.
Okay. What's your first reaction to her?
I kind of went
It's just like a
many
very
different
cool way
places.
to
The
prototype
first
extremely
place
quickly.
was
If I go here in Figma, I just have this.
my grandmother asking me when I was like 12 to make sure nobody put her in a nursing home. Like that came flooding back. When she was talking about being the caregiver. Hey, parents out there, don't do that to your kids. Like, it's not okay for her to be 11 taking care of her grandmother, even if it kept her grandmother out of the home. Like, that's not, no 11-year-old should be responsible for that. But it is what builds the people pleaser, right? And I think a lot of what she was talking about was people pleasing in the form of approval, in that shaping her decisions. I really relate to not necessarily the people pleasing piece, but the part of me that I feel like has been hidden through work, like through remote work specifically. Like I don't feel like the time I've spent working remotely has done me a lot of favors socially. And from a mental health perspective, I feel like it's an easy place to hide instead of going out into the local world and participating differently out there and supporting that community because of what we're asked to do, but also who we're asked to be in that environment, which is, this crazy idea that we can churn out more work than ever before and not pay a price for it. Like, well, you get to stay home. You don't have to commute. Well, yeah, but when I commuted, I worked probably 7 hours less a day. That's a lot. And all that comes at a cost. So I feel like that. I feel like as soon as I started to let those ideas fly, that I was greeted with is Christina not crazy? Like what she's talking about. Like you can't, whatever the call is, you can't go against it and not be called crazy. Yeah. And I think that's part of what she's talking about is like she didn't feel free to be herself in any of those environments because whatever the environment was that community wasn't going to accept that version of her, or at least that's what she believed.
Well, I think it's
And
totally like what she believed too. Like, you get you get caught up in it yourself. It's like the voice in your head that's saying they're going to think I'm crazy, because I mean I'm there, I'm feeling that same thing sometimes. And
yeah,
it's like it's you kind of. It's you calling yourself
yep,
crazy because you've been so committed to something for so long, and you must be crazy to go down the
right.
path that you turned down 15 times, or you thought was a crazy path, or you never thought you'd change your mind on something. I mean, I think that's extremely real for this part of life.
Yeah, I mean, I just up and quit my job. It wasn't like a well thought out plan. There wasn't like an Excel sheet to go with it. It was, I heard a voice in my head that says, you're not going to follow these people down this road again. And I just got up and went to Lauren. I said, hey, you still okay if I quit my job? And he said, yeah, it'll be okay. I said, okay, I'm doing it now.
You
And
also
then,
kind of had planned once you got that floor, right? It was kind of like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
funny though that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. But if you go to take that new turn, it's when you really feel that way, you know, doing it over and over
Oh,
again. Oh, what? Go to another corporation and ride the same bell curve for change management, and you know all the other things we could talk about.
reviews, and doesn't matter what the performance is, there's always a goal that's beyond what the performance is, and you're just gonna march toward it. Everybody's gonna march toward it, and there are gonna be these little things maybe that make that more palatable. And of course, there's the paycheck. You know, that's the real
Yeah.
reason. Otherwise, many people wouldn't be doing what they're doing every day, and that's, you know, that's just the incentive of that gets us to go do all these things. But it's just very, very interesting, because what she's presenting is that there's this midlife event that happens to all of us, which I think is true. But I think people are getting there before midlife now. I think the acceleration of and the speed of the work and the changes and the lack of boiling the frog. Like, it used to be somebody went to work at a corporation and they spent 30 years there, 40 years,
Yep.
and you know, they would be slowly kind of indoctrinated into the system, and they wouldn't go anywhere because there are all these goalposts there that keep them there, that tell them it's not safe outside the corporation.
It's
And
yeah.
you know, that's gone, completely gone.
I think
So
too, obvious the big thing too is knowing that there's other people out there. I think, you know, perhaps if it was held off at bay a little bit before, you know, maybe the stigma of society was even more real than we feel it is now with social media. Because with social media, I mean, it's like if there's a way, there's a site for it, there's an algorithm for it, there's a group for it. And in pre-social media, it was way more, you thought it was the Cosbys and, you know,
yep,
the Married with Children, like whatever you saw on the sitcoms was kind of what everybody was trying to have their house be, you know,
Mary
and
Tyler
have their
you
whole,
know, like
yep.
starting there, and yeah, sure,
So I'm
like
supposed to
everybody
head
wants.
to a midlife crisis. And now you see, you know, maybe it's an enlightenment. It's like an enlightenment of people growing older, ease of life, civilization. Are they having midlife crisis earlier in countries not as advanced? You know, there might be some interesting information there. But I also thought the being needed is easier than being known, and she talks about the vulnerability, I think, and the uncomfortability, which, you know, you and I both have had plenty of conversations about being uncomfortable, and that's the way you grow. And all of the good leadership development training that we've had talks about that. And, I don't know her background or what have you, but I think that too, so many more people are getting that kind of training that opens your mind up to more things like that and earlier. But she didn't go as deep into some of it as I would have. You know, she does in some other videos dive into some of these, so she's got some good stuff out there. What else? I took some notes here.
Well, I think it was interesting as a proving ground. Like she doesn't really know what it looks like to charge out there, so to speak. Like it's easier for her to do it over YouTube because it's still in her control. She can edit it, she can not post it. She's not, while she's talking to the masses, she doesn't have to look anybody in the eye. She doesn't have to face people one on one. And I think that's kind of a key piece because, no matter what, eventually, if you're entrepreneurial, let's say, and she wants to go to the next step with the book and
Right.
the site and everything, she will have to deal directly with people. And that the point of entry is low, but to get to the people part, you have to be pretty darn successful. So everyone who's in that space in between, which is point of entry to really making some money on YouTube, then doesn't have to deal with real people in the sense of in-person engagement. Even the publisher has probably never met with her in person. And I think that's kind of a key piece to the practice she talks about. Like she's practicing being herself, she's practicing being vulnerable and saying whatever she wants to say. And I do think that there's a real role for women where it's kind of this lane, right, where she laid it out. You're creating and developing your career, you're possibly raising children, you're smoothing conflict, you're not in the center, you're not causing conflict. For the most part, women aren't going into their day causing conflict, and if they are, they're probably 16 and then it irons out or they're off to rehab, like things like that. But women are dependable for the most part. And I think that's part of the reason a lot of women look at the historical arc and kind of long for the 60s and the 70s where we could go do whatever we wanted and even disappear off the face of the earth. And that's why the cult angle is so interesting during that time, because women wanted to go and live these different lives. And then they got there and turned out they're raising kids again.
Well, yeah, I think what turned out was that they found out they weren't doing any kind of balancing. It was just adding on.
Just, yeah.
And
just
realized that they made it more unfair for themselves, for ourselves,
Yeah.
for people
100%.
like me.
Yeah.
I loved the quiet editing part. I think that is kind of like what we were talking about. And she's it's funny, not funny, but the process. I mean, it's exactly what we've been talking about. It's the thing that needs to be discussed. It's the her story that as we go through this, like everybody kind of has it down. Like the old guy is gonna get the new car, get the new wife. It's the midlife crisis, but you really never hear the woman's version. I mean, can you think of one thing they say, right? Maybe bird watching, gardening, maybe.
We didn't even get any menopause information. Like, it's the things that drive people to some sort of midlife crisis is in the hormones. Obviously, that's a big piece of it for both men and women as we get older and change. But this is the first generation that's really been in the workforce at scale and gone through perimenopause, which does make us all a little bit insane, just from a hormonal standpoint. But it is, no, nobody's saying, here's the midlife crisis, because we're not doing it loudly, and we're not destroying lives at scale, because we're still in that same role of, we smooth conflict, we don't create it. We're not, we don't have the same carte blanche as maybe men do to go off and torch their lives. It doesn't mean we're not torching our lives, but it's just done in a different manner. And I think that that's the part where it's more of an emotional disruption to ourselves than it is to the outside. Like, it's when a man decides that he's going to have a midlife crisis and he's going to respond to all these changes within him, and he goes out and he finds a younger woman, and it could be because his wife is in a midlife crisis herself and refuses to have sex with him anymore. Like, all of these things go together. And it's like we always talk about root cause. Nobody ever root caused the man midlife crisis. Women went to lunch and talked to other women about it, and men were like, hey, look what Paul's doing over there. I mean, you look at the movie The Four Seasons with Alan Alda. They recently remade that, but I recommend the original. And there's somebody who has this midlife crisis, and he assigns it to his wife. Just can't be married to her anymore. She's not any fun. She doesn't have the same joy about life that she used to have. And at the time when people watched the movie, they were like, well, what an asshole. Well, sure. But also, two people have to participate in a relationship. And if somebody's pretending to be someone they're not for 30 years, it's going to have an impact.
He
And
said
maybe it's not.
He said he said it's not working, but it's like super late to find that out.
Right. Yeah.
Oy. Yeah, I see it now, but we're already almost done. Yeah,
That's
we're
okay.
done. I'm done.
Did we not record anything?
Apparently nothing happened. I don't know. I sent it. I thought everything was good. I saw it live on here. Didn't see that it wasn't, was waiting on information. What the fuck? Why is that happening? I don't understand.
Well, let's figure
Well, we're
it
not
out.
recording and nothing, so
But it says at the top of my thing that we're recording. I feel like we're recording somewhere. Do you see that at the top of your
it just says
tab?
this tab is using your camera and microphone. That sucks.